You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Today we're diving into another chapter, I should say chapters, from the incredible book from Dave Anderson, Elevate Your Excellence, The Power of Doing Ordinary Things Extraordinarily Well. We're now joined by the author himself, Mr. Dave Anderson. You've seen him here before on our network. He's also a speaker, which is an incredible speaker. You're looking to light up your audience, okay? This is the guy that you want in front of it. So also host of the wildly popular podcast, The Game Changer Life. And of course, he's president of a company that's called LearnToLead. You can check him out online. But Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the show once again to take some chapters out of your book. We're getting such great response from all of our subscribers and our viewers about the book and about this series. So thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Oh, thanks, Jim. I'm excited to talk about these chapters today with you.
Great, great. So let's dive right in. Resuscitate daily routines and rituals. Talk to us about that.
A couple of things I think that are important. First of all, people use routine and ritual like they're a synonymous term, but they're different. And I think we always need to be evaluating them. A routine is a block of time you set aside to do something. Mm-hmm. The rituals are the tasks or steps within that routine. A lot of times they're sequential that determine how successful the routine is.
Sure.
And so first of all, we want to go back to what we talked about before. We want good routines from the minute we wake up. Mm-hmm. That create momentum before we're at work, right? That builds confidence, that make us disciplined before we're there. So we want to look at routines and rituals in all areas of our life. But then we really want to examine them at work, because sometimes we have to put in way too much time because we don't do the right things with the time we're there in the first place.
So true.
We have routines that are unfocused. We walk in and we don't know, what are the 4 biggest things I need to accomplish every day? I mean, I may have 40 to do, but if I'm not resolutely clear as to what those, I call them the big 4, what the big 4 are, I don't know what to attack. If I get off track, I don't know what to get back to. Next question is, am I good enough at those things? You know, because if they're big deals, I better be really great at them. And then do my people know what they are? And so I'm always tweaking my routines. And if a routine starts to feel too routine, it's probably not helping you as much. So we want to continue to challenge ourselves with our routines and raise the bar and raise the basis. Remember, the brain wants us to stay comfortable. So it's like wanting you just to hug that routine you have. But I think we need to stretch ourselves and extend ourselves and challenge ourselves like we talked about in the last episode. So I give you a lot of tips in this chapter about how to evaluate and tweak your various routines and rituals before work, at work, after work, so you can maximize your time because you don't get more time. And then if you're in a leadership position, you need to be really concerned about what are your people's routines look like on a daily basis? Yeah. How focused are they?
That's right.
I mean, are they challenging? Are they just going through the motions? I mean, if you work for me and I'm a sales manager and you're a salesperson, and one of your routines, let's say, is to make 10 quality calls a day where you actually talk to a human being. I'm just making up a number, but we got to use something.
Sure.
And let's say you do a great job with that, Jim. You nail it. You do the 10 all the time. You're comfortable with the 10. You never miss the 10. Well, I need to stretch that a little bit.
Yeah.
I need to disturb your routine a little bit.
That's right.
But how you do it needs to be skillful. I could say, hey, Jim, you're doing a great job with the 10 calls. I need 2 more calls a day from you. Mm-hmm. See, then I would have given you a commitment. Mm-hmm. But what I would do instead, see, there's an art to this. I would say, Jim, you're doing a great job with your 10 calls. Have you got 2 more quality calls a day in you? And of course, you're going to say, yes, I do. Now, you've just given me your word. I haven't given you mine. See, if I give you a commitment, you don't have to keep my word. But if I can get you to say it, yeah, I can do that.
That's right.
Now you're more likely to own it. So there's an art to helping people, you know, disturb and expand and improve their own routines as well. And it all matters because everybody needs to maximize their time because we can't get more out of it. And when I teach this section in my Mindset Mastery class, people say this is an eye-opener for me because I kind of have sloppy routines. I'm not focused. I put a lot of hours in. I don't put the right things in those hours. This is going to help me.
That's right.
And then a lot of folks aren't looking at all at their routines before they get to work. So I think this chapter, people are going to find a lot of takeaway.
Now, this next chapter is near and dear to my heart because I always thought, you know, the old adage, you sleep when you die. You know, if you can get in maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep and that's all you need, and of course you're walking around like a zombie in the afternoon, but masterful sleep adds years to your life. Talk to us about that.
Well, I used to say that I bragged by I can get by on 4 hours of sleep a night, and now,
Right.
and I didn't really realize what I was doing to myself until about 8 years ago. I started working with athletes,
Yeah.
and I noticed that a lot of the coaches and stuff were really into studying sleep. So I took these sleep courses from this sleep scientist named Matthew Walker. He's fantastic. I've taken his courses twice. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep. And it's like, oh my goodness. Because I used to just think if you didn't get enough sleep, you wouldn't feel well rested the next day. Well, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So he calls being underslept not getting between 7 and 9 hours. Now, everybody's a little different.
Sure.
But and you can get away with less than that, but it does have a compounding effect over time. So you can think it doesn't matter, and all of a sudden one day it's going to hit you and you got all this stuff wrong with you.
Right.
But what he talks about is if you're underslept, it not just affects how you feel the next day as far as being well rested, it affects your memory.
Yeah.
It affects your emotional control. It affects your ability to make decisions, to be creative, to have ideas, to solve problems. It affects your immune system, and it affects your brain health.
Wow.
And it's like, this is a lot.
Yeah.
There's really high stakes here. For instance, emotions. I know a lot of managers that lack emotional control.
Yeah, no
It
question.
takes one to know one.
No
because
question.
I was that guy.
Sure.
Early on.
Sure.
And when you're sleeping, you got I hate to use these technical terms, but I didn't name this stuff. There's a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. It's the CEO of the brain.
Yeah.
And you got the emotional part of your brain called the amygdala. It's the fight or flight part. Well, all the disappointments or the anger, or the worries, or the trauma you go through during the day, it affects that amygdala. And when you're sleeping, it restores healthy connections with the prefrontal cortex. But if you're underslept, those connections don't get restored.
Wow.
So you're on edge the next day, you're angrier, you're more emotional because that stuff didn't get soothed because you're underslept. And not only that, you misread the emotions of other people. So now I'm misreading you and your motives, and let's face it, that affects you at home with your kids, with your spouse, it affects you with your friends, with your customers.
That's right.
With your teammates. So like emotional control is huge. It's a huge part of success. But how about memory?
Yeah.
So you got something in your brain called the hippocampus. It's like a hard drive. And when you're underslept, your short-term memories don't get downloaded into your long-term memory.
Right.
So they get downloaded into that hippocampus if you're sleeping properly. But if you're underslept, it's like they're just emails just bouncing off that hard drive. And so it affects memory, and that affects performance. You can't remember things. I mean, my goodness. And what really got me was I never heard of this term, but our brain has something called a glymphatic system. Essentially, it's a sewage system.
Okay.
And when you're sleeping, it gets activated when you're sleeping enough.
Right.
And it scrubs all the plaque and stuff that builds up during the course of the day on your brain. You get these amyloid proteins that build up on your brain. And it stops it from building up and turning into plaque and dementia and Alzheimer's.
Wow.
But if you're not sleeping properly, that doesn't get activated, or it doesn't stay activated long enough, and that plaque accumulates. So you may get away with it for a while. You may think, well, I'll sleep when I die. Yeah, well, you might be sleeping earlier than you had planned. Okay, because
that's right.
That's what I realized. It's like, I'll sleep when I die, but it may be years before I really wanted that to happen. And there's so many other things. REM sleep, rapid eye movement. It's dream sleep. And you're in and out of REM sleep about every 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But the longest stint of REM sleep is like the last hour.
Yeah.
So the problem is, by the way, REM sleep is great for you. It's where you get creative.
Yep.
It's like where your brain interacts with different parts that it can't at any other time other than when you're in REM sleep.
Right.
It's when you get creative, you solve problems in your sleep, you wake up with that eureka idea, I know what to do. You wake up and it's like, I got it, right?
Yeah.
But if you're underslept, you're missing out on that last hour of REM sleep. So you're having trouble making decisions.
Wow.
You're stale. You don't have creative ideas. You can get stale in your marriage. You can get stale in your relationships.
Sure.
You can get stale at work. You can't make big decisions with your finances at work. It's a big deal. So what I talk about in the book, first of all, I got to get people's attention. Look, it's more than just not being well rested.
Right.
It's all this other stuff that can happen. You got to understand why. You got to master the art of sleep.
Yeah.
But then I talk about one of the pretenses, one of the concepts in the book is great performance begins before it begins. So great sleep begins before it begins. There's stuff you got to start doing 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, and stuff you got to stop doing 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. That's really going to set up the quality of that night's sleep. And I give just a ton of tips there. Yeah. And I've put this stuff into practice.
Such as doing away with one of these.
The screen time at night, when you're just watching television or a computer or on your phone, it's actually stopping the melatonin from being released and making you sleepy.
Isn't that crazy?
So if you're going to be on screens at night, you got to get these glasses that you put on that block that light that's coming off of it, or your melatonin, which is a good thing. It doesn't get released, so you're not as sleepy as you should be. And so I've done this a long time. I've practiced these things for years, and it works. I will tell you, I travel a lot like many of us do, and I can be in any time zone, change any time zone, and I can go to sleep, and I'm asleep in 2 minutes.
Wow, that's great.
But it starts hours before that. And so I think this is probably the longest chapter in the book. And I didn't know whether I should include it in the book, really, but I have it in my class, my Mindset Mastery class. It's the longest section in the class. And when we read the comment sheets from the people who just went back and practiced what we talked about that first day after class, how it already affected them the next day, it's like, no, I've got to put this in the book. So I think this will help.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Because to your point,
I think it'll add years to your life
and
add life to your years.
That's
and
right.
So, it's a very big deal. It's a lot more than, we got to get rid of that ego thing. I can get by in 4 hours. Well, you might, but there will be a price to pay. There is a compounding effect, and it's going to hit you hard.
That's right.
Someday.
And I think to your point, these hard charging executives and people that want to get up and go, they see sleep, and I always did, as kind of a waste of time. Like, I just got to get the bare minimum. Let me get my 4 or 5 hours of sleep and I'll be done with it. And never got a really great night's sleep, unless you go on vacation or what have you. And then when I did, and I would go on vacation, there was no real reason to get up the next morning for anything specific. And, you'd get up and you'd feel so refreshed and you're ready to attack the day. To your point, you had everything, working that should be working overnight, and you just get up and you feel like, I want to do this every single day. We think we need a vacation to do it, but in reality, we don't. We just need to control our sleep patterns and habits. You can have this every single night, right? I mean, that's the key to this.
You sure can. And anybody can have an off night. But overall, if you're doing the stuff that I talk about in there and you do it consistently, it's going to change things. It's going to change your emotions, your memory, your creativity, your decision-making ability, your immune system, and your longevity. It's a very, very big deal.
There's no question about it. The book is Elevate Your Excellence, the Power of Doing Ordinary Things Extraordinarily Well, which is something we all want to do. Again, the link is right below this video. If you haven't been following me, it's real easy. You're a click away from literally changing your life. Dave has put together a handbook on how to live your life at the fullest, and you did a great job with it, Dave. So thank you so much for taking the time with us during this series. Hopefully we can have you back. We'll delve into some other chapters as well, but it's been great so far. It's been killer for all of our subscribers out there. We're getting such great response from it. So for those of you that haven't gotten the book, get the book, but also turn your friends on to this series right here at the network. So Dave, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.